if one addresses this topic, one has to talk about is the question, why do we need a specific policy framework for organic farming at all? Why is there any specific necessary? Why is the general framework not sufficient? I think that's a fundamental question. And the other question, or the other way to put this question would be, why would we need special consideration of organic farming in agricultural policy? And I think the answer to this is there are a number of reasons for this. The most important thing is that organic farming offers environmental services, and it already has been said before that these environmental services are coming in a bundle. So we are kind of getting not just one product, one environmental service, but many at the same time. That's one reason. The other issue is that organic farming fulfills a consumer demand. And if we take these two arguments together, then we can make consumers pay for environmental services. And that's attractive from a policy point of view. That's unusual. In most cases, we can't do that. However, we can't make them fully pay for all environmental services. And this is where the whole thing gets a little bit complicated. In general, the theory would tell us that environmental services are public goods, and because they're public goods, they're undersupplied. There's many people who like to enjoy it, but not so many who like to pay for the service, and you can always use the service somebody else has paid for. So in that sense, society is not producing enough of it. For that reason, we are having agri-environmental policy, and which also targets organic farming. So that is one reason to link in organic farming into this agri-environmental policy. However, it's probably the most complicated aspect to do this in a good way compared to other agri-environmental policies. The other issue why we need a specific organic policy is that organic food is a credence good. There is something going on what economists call asymmetric information. So the consumer can't see from the good itself how it's produced, but the producer knows how it is produced. And somehow we need to regulate these different states of information, and this is actually what policy does in this area via certification. So the conclusion of these thoughts is that yes, we need specific policies for organic farming, but we also need to consider organic farming in more general policies. They have to be part of a more general framework, and then this logically means that not just the organic farming policy needs to be consistent. I said that was already a difficult task, but actually the agricultural policy framework in general would need to be consistent. That's the logical consequence, I would say. So let's look a little bit at the agricultural policy framework in the past and the reforms. To put it very briefly, since 1992 in the EU we have a decrease of the importance of market and price policies, and we have widespread support of organic farming in agri-environmental programs. A real fundamental reform came about in 2003 when decoupling was introduced. Coupled reforms, or the coupled payments we had before, tended to favor conventional farming because those who produced a lot got a lot of subsidies. Decoupling meant we moved to a more level playing field for organic and conventional agriculture. However, in spite of this fundamental change to a more beneficial policy for organic farming, we didn't have a real large-scale boost for organic farming. So actually we were predicting before this actually was implemented that this was really put organic farming forward. But it did only to a certain degree, and there are some possible reasons like high conventional food prices, the whole issue of the bioenergy policy, which seems to interfere a lot with agricultural policy these days. So that's the past framework. Now, currently, what are the policies that are affecting organic farming? I would say we have three policies, and this is now the sequence. I'm going through them for the rest of my presentations. Three major topics. The first topic is the general CAP framework, including specific organic farming policies, especially there, the agri-environmental programs. So the general CAP framework, of course, first and second pillar measures. Then the second major issue, which sometimes is forgotten in policy debates, however, defining organic farming and guaranteeing the integrity of its products is a major field of policy action. And the third one is research and innovation. And actually it turns out that the EU, of course, is playing a major role in all of these three fields. Let's turn to the first one, the current CAP framework. And here, to be consistent, we have to look a little bit broader at what's going on. Currently, the single farm payment is actually the most important subsidy for agriculture. And there are some environmental restrictions which come with this, the cross-compliance, which is associated with the single farm payment, but there is no agricultural economist who would say that the magnitude of these restrictions can be seen as a justification for the magnitude of the payments. So there's not a good justification there. Actually, the communication from the last communication from the Commission made it quite clear that first pillar payments are meant as income support for active farmers. The problem here is the proportion of those direct payments lead to higher land prices, and ultimately the landowner benefits. And the income objective to support the active farmers might not actually be reached. So for this problem, there are a number of solutions under discussion. One is an upper limit on the amount of payments per enterprise, or some kind of digression after certain sizes. That's one thing. The other thing is, well, if there's not enough justification for first pillar payments, then let's add justification, what's called greening. Or the more radical solution under discussion is, well, let's phase out direct payments under Pillar 1. Now, we have suggestions for a future framework, and there is, of course, an ongoing discussion, but I think an important cornerstone of this discussion still is the communication from the Commission from last November. And I'm here quoting some criticism which has been voiced to this suggestion. It has been said that this communication, which is actually some kind of blueprint of what's going to happen, which of course is now being modified in the discussion, but there's a lot of emphasis on direct payments and their more equitable distribution between member states. But what objectives do these payments serve? That is not quite clear. There's no vision for these payments. There is a strong criticism of the concept of greening of the first pillar. I'm quoting, simple, generalized, non-contractual and annual environmental actions that go beyond cross-compliance and are linked to agriculture, e.g. permanent pasture, green cover, crop rotation and ecological set-aside. Well, the criticism is that more regionalized measures in the second pillar could achieve these objectives much more efficiently and more cheaply for the public.